Let me ask you something. What would you do if the person you trusted most, the one you thought would protect you, left you alone in the street, in the rain, carrying their child inside you? Can you imagine that? Can you feel that sting in your chest right now? This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens when fate itself decides to step in. A millionaire, powerful and cold, thought he could throw away the woman who loved him most. But life doesn't let cruelty go unpaid, does it? I want you to stay with me because the story you're about to hear isn't just drama, it's a mirror. Maybe you've been hurt, maybe you've been abandoned, maybe you know what it feels like to stand in the middle of a storm and wonder if you'll ever see the sun again. If that's you, then trust me, you are not here by accident. And before we dive in, my friends, I need to ask you one more thing. If this story touches your heart, if it makes you think of someone who needs hope right now, please hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to our channel. Because together, we're not just watching stories, we're healing through them. Now, are you ready to see what happens when fate takes its revenge? The night was colder than anyone expected for early spring. The city streets glistened with a thin film of rain, streetlights flickering against the wet pavement like broken stars. On one of those streets, where taxis sped recklessly and pedestrians hurried home, a scene unfolded that no one could have predicted. A young woman, visibly pregnant, was standing alone, trembling, her hands clutching her swollen belly. Her name was Elena. She had just been abandoned by the man she believed was her protector, her husband, the father of her unborn child. That man was Marcus Hale, a self-made millionaire known for his ruthless business moves and impeccable tailored suits. Tonight, however, his ruthlessness had reached its cruelest form yet. After a heated argument in the back seat of his luxury black Mercedes, he shoved the door open and ordered Elena to get out. She begged him, her voice cracking with desperation, "Marcus, please, I have nowhere to go. The baby." But his eyes were as cold as steel. "You'll figure it out. You always do," he muttered, before slamming the car door and speeding away into the night. His taillights disappeared down the slick avenue, leaving her stranded in a world that suddenly felt merciless. Elena staggered, her shoes slipping on the wet pavement, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and disbelief. She wrapped her coat tighter around her body, though the fabric was thin and hardly enough to shield her from the chill. The city that once promised dreams now mocked her with its neon signs and honking horns. She wasn't just a wife anymore. She was an abandoned soul carrying a fragile life inside her. Passers-by glanced but didn't stop. Some whispered, others shook their heads. To them, she was just another struggling woman on the edge of collapse. No one knew her story. No one knew she had once lived in a penthouse where marble floors gleamed and crystal chandeliers sparkled, where she believed love had wrapped her like a blanket. The rain intensified. Elena tried to cross the street, her vision blurred by tears. Her mind screamed, don't fall, protect the baby." Each step felt heavier than the last. Her body trembled, her breath shallow, her heart racing with panic. Then it happened. Tires screeched, headlights flared, and a car came hurtling toward her. Time slowed. She raised her hands instinctively, as if to shield her unborn child. A scream tore through the air, her own, and then the violent thud echoed across the street. The world spun into chaos. When she opened her eyes, the cold ground met her cheek. Pain seared through her side. People rushed toward her now, their gasps and shouts piercing the night. Someone shouted to call an ambulance. Another draped a coat over her trembling body. She could barely whisper, her lips trembling, "My baby, please, my baby." As sirens wailed in the distance, fate carved its first line into Marcus Hale's downfall. He didn't know that abandoning Elena wasn't just an act of cruelty. It was the moment destiny chose to turn against him. For while Elena lay on the pavement fighting for her life, a chain of events had already been set into motion. And what Marcus didn't know, what he could never imagine, was that Elena was far from powerless. Beneath her fragile exterior, beneath the pain and betrayal, there was a secret, one that would soon rise like a storm. That secret would not only change her life, but would destroy his world forever. And when the ambulance doors closed on that rainy night, it wasn't just Elena's survival that was at stake. It was the beginning of Marcus Hale's reckoning. Elena Martinez had not always lived in glittering penthouses or walked through marble hallways. Before Marcus Hale entered her life, she had been just another woman in the bustling city, working long shifts at a small community library. She was 25 then, with warm brown eyes and hair that curled softly around her shoulders. Her beauty wasn't loud or extravagant, it was quiet, the kind that lingered in memory like a familiar melody. She grew up in a modest neighborhood on the south side of the city. Her parents, immigrants from Mexico, had raised her on values of hard work and humility. They didn't have much money, but they had love, and that love became the foundation of Elena's strength. She learned early how to make do with little, how to stretch meals, how to share hand-me-down clothes, how to smile even when life felt heavy. Her father worked construction until his back gave out, and her mother cleaned offices at night. Elena often helped her mother mop floors after school, carrying her books in one hand and a bucket in the other. She never complained. Instead, she dreamed of becoming a teacher, someone who could inspire children the way her parents inspired her. But dreams have a way of bending when life throws unexpected storms. By the time she was in college, juggling part-time jobs and classes, her mother fell gravely ill. Cancer. The medical bills piled up higher than Elena's paychecks, and eventually she had to put her studies on hold. She took care of her mother until the very end, holding her hand through the pain, whispering prayers into the silence. When her mother passed away, Elena felt as though part of her soul had been torn away. Her father, broken with grief, sank deeper into his own silence, leaving Elena to carry the weight of survival alone. She found herself working at the library full-time, shelving books by day, tutoring children by night, barely making rent. Life was tough, but she held on. Because that's what her mother had taught her, to keep walking even when the road seemed endless. Then Marcus appeared. He came into the library one afternoon, tall, confident, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He wasn't there for books. He was there for a meeting with a city councilman who had insisted on using the library's private reading room for some political discussion. Elena had been the one to guide Marcus there, her hands slightly trembling as she noticed his piercing blue eyes and the way he carried himself like the world belonged to him. To her surprise, Marcus noticed her. "Do you work here every day?" he had asked, his voice smooth like polished steel. She nodded shyly. He smiled, and that smile became the beginning of a whirlwind she could never have imagined. In the weeks that followed, Marcus returned to the library, not for politics, not for business, but for her. He charmed her with flowers, took her to dinner she couldn't have afforded in her wildest dreams, and listened when she talked about her parents and her childhood. He seemed so different from the cold world of wealth he came from. With him, she felt seen. She felt chosen. 6 months later, they were married in a quiet civil ceremony. Elena thought she had stepped into a fairy tale. From her modest apartment, she moved into Marcus's luxury penthouse with panoramic views of the city. She went from counting pennies for groceries to shopping in boutiques where price tags didn't matter. Yet, despite the glittering world around her, Elena never forgot who she was. She still cooked simple meals, still called her father every week, still found comfort in the smell of old books. But Marcus began to change. At first, he was tender, protective, but as his business empire grew, so did his arrogance. He began to criticize her for being too quiet, too plain, too unambitious. "You don't fit into my world," he told her one night after a gala, where she had worn a modest dress she thought was elegant enough. His words pierced her heart like shards of glass. Still, Elena held on. When she discovered she was pregnant, her heart soared with hope. She thought the baby would bring them closer. She imagined Marcus holding their child, imagined their fractured love being mended by the tiny heartbeat growing inside her. For a moment, Marcus seemed happy, even proud. He promised to take care of her, promised they would be a family. But promises are fragile in the hands of a man who worships money more than love. As her belly grew, so did the distance between them. Marcus spent more nights at business meetings and more weekends traveling. Elena tried to ignore the rumors she overheard, the whispers of a young woman Marcus was seen with at exclusive restaurants, the perfume lingering on his suits that wasn't hers. She convinced herself it was stress, that he would come back to her once the baby arrived. Then came the night that shattered her world. After another argument, this time about her, burdening him with doctor's appointments and medical bills, Marcus ordered the driver to stop the car in the middle of a busy street. Elena begged him, tears streaming down her face, her hands gripping her belly. But he had already grown tired of her. In his mind, she was no longer the beautiful woman he once courted. She was a weight, a reminder of responsibility he didn't want. And so he left her there, in the rain, as if she were nothing more than a forgotten chapter in his story. That was who Elena was when the car struck her. A woman abandoned, heartbroken, vulnerable. But beneath her fragile frame burned a fire she didn't yet know existed. Life had already taught her to survive storms. And this storm, this betrayal, would not break her forever. Because while Marcus thought he had discarded her like trash, fate was quietly preparing her for a resurrection that would shake his empire to its core. And as she lay in the hospital bed that night, weak but breathing, Elena whispered to her unborn child, "We will rise again." The sterile white of the hospital room glowed under fluorescent lights, buzzing faintly like the sound of trapped bees. Elena lay there, her body bruised, her spirit fractured, but her hands never left her stomach. Machines beeped steadily, monitoring both her heartbeat and that of the child she carried. Every time the soft rhythm echoed through the room, she clung to it like a lifeline. The hospital wasn't private or exclusive. It was a public one, crowded with patients and the faint smell of disinfectant lingering in every hallway. Nurses rushed past, their shoes squeaking against the linoleum floors, voices blending into a constant hum of urgency. Elena's bed was by a cracked window, the blinds rattling whenever the wind pushed against the glass. The blanket was thin, barely enough to shield her from the draft, and the water pitcher at her bedside had gone lukewarm. This was her reality now, a reality of survival. Meanwhile, just a few miles across the city, another scene played out, one that stood in brutal contrast. Inside the Crystal Tower, a skyscraper Marcus Hale had purchased last year, the top floor glowed like a palace suspended above the clouds. A grand gala was unfolding. Chandeliers, each worth more than a family's yearly income, spilled golden light across marble floors. Waiters in pressed tuxedos glided like dancers balancing silver trays of champagne. The city's elite, politicians, tech moguls, and celebrity investors, moved in a whirl of sequins and silk, their laughter echoing across the cavernous hall. At the center of it all was Marcus. He wore a custom black suit, tailored to perfection, the fabric shimmering under the lights. On his arm wasn't Elena, the wife who lay in a hospital bed clinging to life. No. He appeared with Vanessa Moore, a socialite barely out of her 20s, draped in a gown of scarlet satin. Cameras flashed as Marcus whispered something into her ear, making her laugh, her hand brushing possessively against his chest. No one in that glittering room questioned Elena's absence. In Marcus's world, appearances mattered more than truth. He smiled for photographs, raised his glass during toasts, and announced a new real estate venture worth hundreds of millions. To the crowd, he was untouchable, a man of vision, power, and endless charm. Yet outside those glass walls, fate had begun drawing its own picture, one that glitter couldn't hide. Back at the hospital, Elena's father sat beside her bed. His once strong hands, now rough and weathered from years of labor, trembled as he touched her arm. "Mija," he whispered in Spanish, his voice breaking. "You will not go through this alone. Your mother would want you to fight." Tears slipped from Elena's closed eyes. She wanted to answer, to promise she would rise, but her throat was too raw, her body too weak. Instead, she pressed his hand against her belly. The baby kicked softly, as if answering for her. Her world had narrowed to this small room, this fragile hope. But even in her brokenness, a spark was being lit. The starkness of the hospital, the kindness of strangers who rushed to her aid, the quiet strength of her father, all of it carved into her heart a truth she would later use as a weapon. She had survived the street, the betrayal, and the impact of a car. She could survive anything. The city outside seemed almost cruel in its indifference. Neon lights blinked, billboards advertised luxury goods, and taxis honked impatiently. Life went on, as if Elena's suffering was invisible. But in Marcus's tower, the music grew louder. Guests clinked glasses, applauding him as he declared, "Hale Enterprises will reshape this city's skyline." His voice boomed with pride, echoing off the crystal walls. Vanessa kissed his cheek for the cameras, her scarlet lips leaving a faint mark that made whispers ripple through the crowd. To him, Elena was already erased. Yet destiny has a way of weaving threads unseen by men like Marcus. While he basked in temporary glory, his abandoned wife was being watched over by forces he underestimated. Her father's devotion, the resilience of her unborn child, and the quiet power of survival. The two settings, the fragile hospital room and the glittering tower, were not just backdrops, they were symbols. One showed the cruelty of a man who had forgotten love, the other the strength of a woman who had nothing left but the will to endure. And in stories like these, it is never the chandeliers or champagne that last. It is the fire born in suffering that eventually lights the darkest halls. Elena didn't know it yet, but the hospital would not only be the place where she clung to life. It would be the ground where her rebirth began. And while Marcus raised his glass to a future built on lies, fate was already pouring the first cracks into his empire. Cracks that Elena herself would one day turn into an earthquake. Marcus Hale's rise to power was the kind of story people loved to tell at cocktail parties. He wasn't born into wealth. He clawed his way up from nothing, using ambition like a blade and charm like a shield. In his early 20s, he worked as a real estate broker, hustling deals others thought impossible. By 30, he had leveraged enough contacts and cunning to buy his first skyscraper. By 35, his name was whispered with both envy and fear in the boardrooms of New York. But success has a way of sharpening the worst edges of a man. Marcus had built his empire on risk, but the higher he climbed, the less human he became. To his employees, he was a god in a tailored suit, a man whose approval meant career advancement and whose disfavor meant instant exile. To the media, he was the shark of the skyline, ruthless yet captivating. To Elena, however, he was supposed to be something different. He was supposed to be a husband, a protector, a father. Instead, he became her destroyer. Vanessa Moore entered Marcus's life like a spark on gasoline. She was 26, a former model turned influencer with millions of followers who adored her curated life of red carpets and luxury vacations. She was beautiful in a way that demanded attention, icy blonde hair, piercing green eyes, and a figure sculpted to perfection. But beneath the glamour was ambition sharper than any blade. Marcus first met her at a private gala hosted by one of his investors. Elena had been invited too, but she was already several months pregnant, feeling tired and insecure in her modest gown. That night, she stayed home, believing Marcus's claim that it would be strictly business. But it was anything but. Vanessa was there, draped in a gown of midnight blue that shimmered with every step. She laughed at Marcus's jokes, touched his arm just long enough to send a message, and leaned close when the cameras flashed. By the end of the evening, whispers spread like wildfire. Marcus Hale had found himself a new companion. For Marcus, Vanessa represented everything Elena didn't. She was glamorous, ambitious, hungry for power. She fit perfectly into the image he wanted the world to see, the unstoppable tycoon with the perfect woman on his arm. Elena's simplicity, her kindness, her quiet strength, qualities that once charmed him, now seemed like weaknesses in his distorted eyes. At first, Marcus tried to live in two worlds. He came home to Elena, offering her empty promises and half-hearted affection, while spending nights in penthouse suites with Vanessa. But secrets don't stay hidden for long. Elena began noticing the signs: lipstick stains on his shirts, the faint scent of another woman's perfume, his constant excuses about late meetings. When she confronted him, Marcus didn't deny it. Instead, he turned the blame on her. "You've let yourself go," he snapped one evening, ignoring the fact that she was carrying his child. "You don't understand my world, Elena. You never did. Vanessa gets it. She belongs beside me. You just drag me down." Those words cut deeper than any blade. And yet, Elena stayed, hoping the baby would remind him of who he used to be. She prayed that the man she once loved still existed somewhere beneath the arrogance. But Marcus wasn't looking back. He was intoxicated by power and Vanessa's adoration. Together, they became the couple everyone gossiped about, the ruthless millionaire and the glamorous socialite. Tabloids splashed their photos across covers, while Elena's existence was erased from Marcus's narrative. The cruelty didn't stop there. Marcus began to humiliate Elena in subtle ways. He criticized her appearance in front of others, ignored her at events, and eventually stopped bringing her altogether. When she tried to talk about the baby's future, he brushed her off, saying, "Don't worry about it. I'll handle everything." But what he meant wasn't protection. It was control. He saw Elena not as a partner, but as a burden. Vanessa fueled his arrogance. She whispered poison into his ear, mocking Elena behind closed doors. "She looks like a charity case," Vanessa sneered one night after spotting Elena at a cafe. "She doesn't fit your world, Marcus. People laugh at you when you show up with her." Marcus laughed too, though deep down, some part of him knew the truth. Elena was worth more than Vanessa could ever be. But he had already chosen the glitter over the gold. That choice reached its peak the night he abandoned Elena on the street. Vanessa had been pressuring him, demanding he prove his loyalty. "If you're really mine," she said, her green eyes flashing, "then cut ties. Completely. No more wife, no more sympathy act. Choose me or lose me." Marcus, blinded by lust and pride, chose her. He shoved Elena out of the car that rainy night, leaving her broken in the street. And as he sped away toward Vanessa's waiting arms, he didn't look back. To the world, Marcus Hale was untouchable. To himself, he was invincible. But fate does not forget cruelty. For every toast he raised at glittering galas, for every photo he staged with Vanessa on his arm, a storm brewed in silence. Elena's suffering had been seen, not just by strangers on the street that night, but by destiny itself. And destiny has no mercy for men who discard love for vanity. Because while Marcus and Vanessa celebrated their shallow empire, Elena's quiet strength was about to become the weapon that would destroy them both. 2 weeks had passed since the night Marcus left Elena bleeding on the street. Though the hospital stitched her body back together, her spirit still bore open wounds. She tried to focus on her baby, telling herself every day that she had to survive for the tiny heartbeat inside her. But survival was never easy when humiliation trailed her like a shadow. News of Marcus's relationship with Vanessa had spread quickly, the tabloids ravenous for every photo. There he was, smiling beside his glamorous mistress, attending charity galas as though nothing had happened. In glossy magazines, Vanessa glowed in designer gowns, while Marcus boasted about his expanding empire. Not once did he acknowledge Elena, his wife, his unborn child, or the pain he had inflicted. To the public eye, she didn't exist. But humiliation has a cruel way of making itself seen. One gray afternoon, Elena received a phone call from her father. His voice shook. "Mija, they're talking about you on the television. About Marcus. About the baby." Her heart froze. She turned on the small hospital TV, and there it was, a press conference held in the Crystal Tower lobby. Marcus stood at the podium, Vanessa at his side, cameras flashing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice dripping with polished arrogance, "I want to clarify recent rumors. My relationship with Vanessa is not new. It is strong, committed, and real. As for the other stories circulating..." He paused dramatically, flashing his perfect smile. "Let me assure you, I am not responsible for anyone else's choices or circumstances. Some people cling to the past, but I choose the future." Vanessa leaned in, kissed his cheek, and the crowd erupted in applause. Elena's knees buckled. She clutched her stomach, her baby kicking in response to her racing heartbeat. The words rang in her ears like thunder. Not responsible. Clinging to the past. He had reduced her entire existence, her marriage, her child, her pain, to a disposable rumor. But fate wasn't done with her humiliation. 3 nights later, Elena decided to leave the hospital for a short walk. She wore a loose coat, her hair tied back, hoping to breathe fresh air away from the suffocating smell of disinfectant. As she stepped outside, she noticed flashing lights at the nearby hotel. A crowd had gathered, cheering, cameras raised. Against her better judgment, Elena drew closer. And there they were, Marcus and Vanessa, stepping out of a limousine, dazzling under the paparazzi's glare. He wore a tuxedo, she shimmered in gold silk. The event was the annual Metropolitan Charity Ball, one Elena had attended with Marcus the previous year. Back then, she had stood proudly at his side, believing in their love. Now she was a ghost among strangers, watching from the sidewalk. Reporters shouted questions. "Marcus, any comments on your wife's condition?" Marcus didn't flinch. He tightened his grip on Vanessa's hand, pulling her closer. "Elena is no longer part of my life," he declared. his voice amplified through microphones. "I wish her well, but my future is with Vanessa." The words landed like knives. Gasps rippled through the crowd, some reporters exchanging shocked glances. But Marcus didn't stop. He looked straight at the cameras and added, "I will not be held hostage by the past." Vanessa smirked, her arm sliding around his waist like a queen claiming her throne. Elena's vision blurred with tears. The humiliation was complete. Not only had he abandoned her, but now he erased her publicly, as if she and the baby were stains to be scrubbed from his perfect image. Strangers whispered around her. Some pointed, recognizing her fragile figure in the shadows. "That's her," someone murmured. "The wife, the pregnant one he left." Her cheeks burned. She turned away, stumbling into the dark street, her breath shallow, her chest tightening. The voices followed her, mocking, pitying, cruel. She had never felt so small, so invisible, so utterly destroyed. That night, back in her hospital bed, Elena wept until dawn. She pressed her hand against her belly and whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought your father would love us. I thought." Her words broke into sobs. She felt powerless, shattered beyond repair. For the first time, Elena considered giving up, not on her life, but on her fight. The weight of shame pressed down like chains. What was the point of resisting when Marcus controlled everything? The money, the media, the narrative? But fate has a strange way of finding cracks in despair. The very next morning, a nurse brought in a newspaper someone had left in the waiting room. Elena didn't want to look, but her father insisted. "Read this, Hija. Just read." There, on the front page, was a single photograph. Marcus smirking at the gala, Vanessa clinging to him like a trophy. But beside it was another picture. Elena, pale and bruised, being carried into an ambulance the night of the accident. A bystander had snapped it, and now it had surfaced. The headline screamed, "Millionaire's pregnant wife abandoned, hit by car hours before he appears with mistress." The article painted a different story than Marcus's polished lies. It described witnesses who had seen him push Elena from his car, leaving her on the rain-slicked street. It quoted doctors speaking anonymously about her condition, about how both mother and child had been in critical danger. Suddenly, Marcus's perfect image had cracks, and the world began to ask questions. For Elena, it was a double-edged blade. She hated the pity, hated being splashed across tabloids as the tragic wife. But for the first time, she wasn't invisible. The truth, or at least part of it, was out, and that truth would become the seed of something greater. Because humiliation, when endured too long, stops being a wound, it becomes fuel. And Elena, though still fragile, was beginning to burn. And as Marcus and Vanessa laughed at their own reflection in a golden mirror that night, they didn't know the woman they had discarded was already rising from the ashes, ready to turn her shame into fire. Elena had always believed she was strong. She survived her mother's illness, her father's silence, the endless days of working 2 jobs just to stay afloat. But nothing had prepared her for this. The humiliation replayed in her mind like a cruel film. Marcus's words at the gala, "I will not be held hostage by the past," echoed louder than the applause that followed. The sight of Vanessa smirking beside him haunted her dreams. And the whispers of strangers on the sidewalk, "That's her, the wife, the pregnant one he left," stabbed deeper than any knife. She tried to eat, but food turned to ash in her mouth. She tried to sleep, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw headlights, heard tires screeching, felt the thud of her body hitting the street. She jolted awake, drenched in sweat, her hands trembling as she clutched her belly. Her father stayed by her side, sleeping in a chair beside her hospital bed. He tried to be strong, but even he couldn't hide the sorrow in his eyes. One night, she overheard him praying softly in Spanish. "Dios mío, give her strength. Don't let my daughter break." But Elena was breaking. The doctors advised her to avoid stress, but how could she when her entire world had collapsed? Her marriage was gone, her reputation shredded, her body fragile. She was 6 months pregnant, alone and powerless against the man who once vowed to love her. One evening, as rain tapped against the hospital window, Elena reached her lowest point. She sat upright in bed, staring at her reflection in the darkened glass. The woman staring back was unrecognizable. Pale, hollow-eyed, her hair limp around her face, she looked like a ghost. A whisper slipped from her lips. Maybe Marcus was right. The thought horrified her. but it sank deeper with each passing second. Maybe she was too weak. Maybe she didn't belong in his world of glitter and power. Maybe her child would be better off without her dragging them through a life of shame. Tears streamed down her face. She pressed her palm to her belly and whispered, "I don't know if I can do this." The baby kicked in response, as if protesting her words. She gasped, covering her mouth, sobs shaking her fragile body. That tiny movement, so small yet so alive, pulled her back from the edge, if only slightly. Still, the darkness clung to her like a suffocating blanket. The following days blurred. Nurses checked her vitals, her father tried to feed her, but Elena drifted through it all like a shadow. Depression wrapped its claws around her, whispering lies that she was worthless, that Marcus had been justified, that she was nothing but a burden. Then came the night she almost gave up. Her father had stepped out to get coffee, leaving her alone. The hospital room was silent, the only sound the steady beep of the monitor. Elena stared at the IV in her arm, at the window open just a crack to let in the cold night air. For the first time, she considered ending the pain altogether. A single thought consumed her. If I disappear, maybe the baby won't have to suffer. She slid her feet to the floor, trembling, her breath shallow. But as she stood, the baby kicked again, harder this time. She froze. Another kick, and another. Tears flooded her eyes as she clutched her stomach. "No," she whispered. "No, I can't. You need me." Collapsing back onto the bed, she sobbed uncontrollably, rocking herself as though trying to cradle the life inside her. She realized then that despair had nearly stolen everything. Not just her life, but her child's chance to know a mother's love. Her father returned moments later, his coffee spilling as he rushed to her side. "Elena, Dios mío, what happened?" She shook her head, unable to speak. But in her eyes, he saw both the darkness she had battled and the fragile spark that still remained. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like he hadn't since she was a little girl. "Listen to me," he said fiercely, his voice breaking. "You are not weak. You are my daughter. You are your mother's daughter. You will rise. Do you hear me?" His words pierced the fog. For the first time in weeks, Elena clung to something other than despair. Her father's faith in her, the baby's tiny kicks, the memory of her mother's strength. But recovery was not instant. The days ahead were still heavy, filled with tears and nightmares. She struggled to eat, struggled to smile, yet slowly, painfully, a shift began. Each time her baby moved, she reminded herself, "I'm still needed." Each time her father held her hand, she remembered, "I'm not alone." And then came the letter. One morning, a nurse handed her an envelope. "This came for you," she said gently. The paper was thick, expensive, the handwriting elegant. Inside was a single note. "Mrs. Hale, the world has seen your suffering, but you are not invisible. You have allies you don't yet know. When you are ready, contact the number below. Your future does not end here." No signature, just a phone number. Elena's heart pounded as she read the words over and over. Who had sent it? A journalist? A stranger? Someone from Marcus's world who secretly despised him? She didn't know. But for the first time since her collapse, she felt something other than despair. She felt curiosity. The darkness hadn't vanished, but a door had opened, just a crack. And sometimes a crack is all it takes for light to flood in. And as Elena held the letter in her trembling hands, she didn't realize she was holding the first key to her transformation, the first step in turning her pain into power. The mysterious letter lay on Elena's lap, its edges slightly crumpled from the way her trembling fingers had clutched it through the night. She had read it over and over, each word digging into her soul like a seed waiting to grow. You are not invisible. You have allies you don't yet know. Contact the number below. At first, she thought it was a cruel joke, another reminder of her shattered life. But something about the handwriting, the weight of the paper, the confidence in the words, told her it was real. It wasn't pity, it was a promise. Her father urged caution. "Mija, people can be dangerous. Don't trust so quickly." But Elena felt something stir inside her, a spark of curiosity, maybe even hope. For weeks she had been drowning in despair, invisible in Marcus's glittering shadow. And now, someone was telling her she wasn't alone. That evening, when her father had gone home to rest, Elena picked up the hospital phone. Her hand shook as she dialed the number. 1 ring. 2. 3. Then a deep, calm voice answered. "Mrs. Hale?" She froze. "Who is this?" I represent people who have been watching your husband, the voice said. Powerful people. He believes himself untouchable, but his arrogance has made him enemies, and now he has made himself vulnerable by what he did to you. Elena's breath caught. Why would anyone care about me? Because, the voice replied firmly, you are the key to his undoing. Before she could respond, the man continued. We know who you really are, Elena Martinez Hale. You are not just a discarded wife. You are the rightful heir to property your husband tried to bury. Land, investments. Your name is still on the documents. He thinks you don't know, but we do. And if you are willing, we will help you reclaim what is yours. Elena's head spun. She had never cared about money, never looked at Marcus's contracts or asked about his business. She thought she had nothing, that she was penniless without him. But now, this stranger was telling her Marcus had built part of his empire on assets connected to her. Who are you? She whispered again. There was a pause. Then, an old friend of your mother. Her heart stopped. My mother? Yes, she may be gone, but the legacy she left you is not. Marcus has tried to erase it, but he can't. Not unless you let him. The line went silent. Then it clicked dead. Elena sat frozen, the receiver pressed against her ear long after the call ended. An old friend of her mother. A hidden legacy. Documents with her name. It was too much to believe, and yet, something deep in her soul told her it was true. Her mother had always whispered to her, you are stronger than you know. Maybe this was what she meant. The next morning, Elena found an envelope slipped under her hospital door. Inside were copies of legal documents, property deeds, stock certificates, accounts with her signature. Proof. Marcus had hidden them, funneled them into his empire, but they still tied back to her. Her father's eyes widened as he read. Hija, do you understand what this means? He cannot erase you. By law, you own part of what he claims as his. The weight of despair began to lift, replaced by something unfamiliar. Power. For the first time, Elena realized she wasn't as helpless as Marcus wanted her to believe. He had discarded her like trash, but he had made a fatal mistake. He had underestimated her. And she wasn't alone. The following week, she was released from the hospital. She moved into her father's modest home, far from the glitter of Marcus's penthouse. The neighborhood smelled of fresh bread from the corner bakery. Children's laughter echoed through narrow streets, and the nights were quiet. It wasn't glamorous, but it was safe, and it gave her space to heal. But Elena was no longer content with survival. She wanted justice. With the help of the anonymous contact, who later introduced himself as Gabriel, her mother's former lawyer, Elena began piecing together the truth. Gabriel revealed that her mother had once owned significant property shares before marrying her father. Investments Marcus had quietly seized through their marriage. Your mother trusted me, Gabriel told her during their first meeting. And now I will honor her by protecting you. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. For so long she believed Marcus had all the power, that she was nothing but a shadow of his empire. But here, in dusty folders and signed documents, was proof that she still had a voice. Her breakdown had left her fragile, but now she felt something different rising inside her. Steel. She began to change. No more hospital gowns, no more hiding behind fear. She started wearing clothes that reminded her of her strength. Simple but elegant dresses, her mother's old jewelry, polished and gleaming, shoes that clicked with confidence against the pavement. She carried herself taller, her hands often resting protectively on her belly, as though to say, we are still here. We will not be erased. And slowly, whispers began to spread in the city. Reporters caught sight of her leaving Gabriel's office. Paparazzi snapped photos of her walking through the courthouse steps with her father at her side. Headlines shifted from "Millionaire's Mistress Triumphs" to "Abandoned Wife Fights Back." Marcus laughed when he first heard. She's weak, he told Vanessa over champagne in their penthouse. Let her try. She has nothing. But beneath his arrogance, a flicker of unease began to grow. Because Marcus knew better than anyone. Elena's name was on those documents. And if she chose to fight, she could unravel everything he had built. The tables were turning. Elena was no longer just the humiliated wife. She was the woman Marcus had underestimated. And now, with the truth in her hands, she was ready to transform despair into vengeance. And as Marcus toasted his own reflection in a glass of brandy that night, he had no idea that his greatest downfall had already begun. in the quiet determination of the woman he left for dead. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Elena had ever known. For the first time since Marcus abandoned her, she woke each day not in despair but with purpose. With Gabriel's guidance and her father's quiet strength at her side, she began preparing for a battle she never thought she'd fight. The transformation started small. She cut her hair, the limp strands replaced by a bold, confident style. She wore tailored dresses that hugged her figure proudly, showing the world that pregnancy was not weakness but power. No longer did she walk with downcast eyes. Her steps carried intention, her shoulders squared, her gaze steady. The press noticed. Headlines shifted again. Elena Martinez Hale returned stronger than ever. Photos of her stepping out of courtrooms, her hand protectively over her baby bump, flooded tabloids. For once, she wasn't painted as the victim. She was the fighter, the survivor. But Marcus still believed she was no threat. "She's making noise, that's all," he scoffed to Vanessa one evening as they lounged in their penthouse. "Let her talk to reporters. None of it matters. I own the board. I own the judges. She can't touch me." Vanessa smirked, swirling wine in her glass. "Then why do you look worried, Marcus?" He ignored her, but deep inside, fear gnawed at him. He remembered the documents with Elena's name, the whispers among his investors, the way certain partners had grown hesitant since the scandal broke. For the first time, cracks appeared in his empire. The turning point came at the annual Skyline Gala, a night meant to celebrate Marcus's latest multi-billion-dollar development project. It was his crowning glory, his chance to show the city he was still untouchable. Politicians, CEOs, and celebrities filled the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers raining golden light on polished marble floors. Marcus arrived with Vanessa on his arm, smug as ever. But fate had prepared a different performance. As the orchestra played and the crowd mingled, the heavy doors of the ballroom swung open. Conversations hushed. Heads turned. And there she was, Elena. She walked into the room like a storm disguised as grace. Her gown was midnight blue, flowing elegantly over her rounded belly, the diamonds at her neck catching every glint of light. At her side was Gabriel, dignified and commanding, his presence unmistakable. And just behind them, two of Marcus's former investors, men once loyal to him, now aligned with her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Elena's entrance was not just unexpected, it was electric. Marcus's face drained of color. "What the hell is she doing here?" he muttered under his breath, his grip on Vanessa tightening. Elena didn't look at him. She walked with calm authority, greeting guests who had once ignored her. Some reached for her hands, others whispered support. For the first time, Marcus wasn't the star of the evening. She was. The climax came when the host invited Marcus to the stage to deliver his speech. He straightened his jacket, forced a smile, and strode forward. But before he could begin, Elena stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said, her voice clear, steady. "I have something to say." The crowd shifted, eager, sensing scandal. Marcus hissed, "Sit down, Elena. This isn't your place." She turned to him, her eyes blazing. "It was never my place, was it, Marcus? You made sure of that. But tonight, it is." The host, sensing drama too irresistible to ignore, handed her the microphone. The room fell silent. Elena raised her chin. "2 months ago, this man abandoned me on the street while I was carrying his child. Hours later, I was struck by a car and nearly lost my life. While I lay bleeding, he appeared with his mistress, smiling for cameras, pretending I did not exist. But I am here. I survived, and I will not be erased." Gasps erupted, whispers spreading like wildfire. Marcus's jaw clenched, his smile frozen in place. Elena continued, her voice unwavering. "This empire he boasts about, these towers, these deals, he did not build them alone. Documents prove that part of what he owns still belongs to me, through my family's legacy. He thought I was too weak to fight, but he was wrong." With that, Gabriel stepped forward, holding up a folder thick with papers. "Here is the evidence," he announced. "Contracts, deeds, investments, all signed in Elena's name. Marcus Hale has been profiting off assets he tried to bury, and the law will no longer allow it." The ballroom erupted in chaos. Reporters shouting, cameras flashing, guests whispering in shock. Investors pulled out phones, murmuring about pulling their funds. Politicians exchanged uneasy glances. Marcus tried to speak, his voice desperate. "This is nonsense. She's lying. She's nothing without me." But his words fell flat. No one believed him anymore. Elena's eyes locked on his, steady and fierce. You left me on the street, Marcus, but I rose, and I will keep rising, for myself, for my child, and tonight everyone will finally see you for what you are. The crowd thundered with applause. Marcus stood frozen, his carefully crafted image crumbling around him. Vanessa, sensing the shift, quietly slipped her arm away from his. The cameras captured it all. The downfall of the millionaire who thought himself untouchable. Undone not by rivals or markets, but by the woman he discarded. By the end of the night, Marcus's investors announced their withdrawal. His project collapsed within days. Lawsuits followed, the evidence Elena revealed tearing through his empire like wildfire. Elena, however, emerged stronger than ever. With Gabriel's help, she reclaimed her rightful assets, securing a future not just for herself, but for her child. She didn't need Marcus's wealth. She had her own. She didn't need his name. Her own was enough. And when her baby was born weeks later, healthy and strong, she held the child close and whispered, "We made it. We're free." Her journey had not been easy. She had been humiliated, abandoned, broken. But she rose, stronger than before, proving that fate always finds its way back to those who suffer unjustly. And as Marcus watched from the shadows of his crumbling empire, he finally understood. The woman he left in the street had become the storm that destroyed him. So my wonderful friends, here we are at the end of this story. If you've stayed with me until now, it must mean something touched your heart along the way. Elena's journey is more than just drama. It is a reminder for all of us. Life will betray us, break us, humiliate us, but as the Stoics taught, it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond that defines your destiny. Marcus chose arrogance and cruelty. Elena chose resilience and faith. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." And isn't that what we saw? A woman once abandoned in the street rose again, not only to protect her child, but to rebuild her dignity, to claim her rightful place in the world. Maybe you too are facing a storm right now, loss, betrayal, loneliness. Let Elena's story remind you that storms don't last forever. Pain is real, but so is healing. And when you choose courage over despair, you rise higher than those who tried to bury you. Marcus thought he had the final word, but fate always delivers justice in its own time. So I ask you, my dear friends, what storm are you walking through? And can you see the seed of strength that is planting inside you? If this story moved you, if it gave you even a little hope, then do me this favor. Like this video, share it with someone who might need encouragement, and subscribe to our channel so we can keep walking these journeys together. Because none of us are truly alone. And as Elena proved, even from the darkest nights, we can rise again.
The glossy black Mercedes crawled through unfamiliar streets as James Caldwell checked his phone's GPS for the third time. His driver had called in sick, and now he was lost in one of the city's poorest neighborhoods. Row houses with boarded windows lined the crumbling sidewalks, their facades decorated with graffiti. Street lights flickered uncertainly in the growing dusk. James loosened his silk tie, uncomfortable in the heat. He should have been at the charity gala 20 minutes ago. As chairman of Caldwell Industries, his absence would be noticed. He was about to make a U-turn when movement caught his eye. A teenage boy, maybe 15 or 16, stood on the corner displaying small trinkets on a weathered cardboard box. The boy's clothes were clean but worn, jeans with patched knees, a faded t-shirt that hung loose on his thin frame. Despite his circumstances, he maintained a dignified posture, calling out to passing cars with unwavering determination. James pulled over, telling himself he just needed directions. As he approached, the boy's sales pitch died on his lips. His dark eyes watched James warily, taking in the expensive suit and leather briefcase. Looking for something specific, the boy asked, his voice carrying a hint of defensiveness. "Actually, I'm lost," James admitted. "I'm trying to get to the Grand Hotel downtown." "You're way off course." The boy gestured at his merchandise, handmade bracelets, carved wooden figures, simple paintings on small canvases. "But since you're here, want to buy something? Everything's original work." James examined a bracelet, genuinely impressed by the intricate beadwork. "You made these?" "Yeah. Name's Malik." He straightened slightly. "Got to make money somehow, right?" Something in the boy's tone, a familiar determination, made James pause. "I'm James." How long have you been selling these? Couple years now. Since Mom got sick. Malik's expression flickered. Sarah always said art would feed my soul, but I figured out how to make it feed my stomach too. James nearly dropped the bracelet. Sarah. It couldn't be the same Sarah, but his mind raced back 15 years to dark curls and a brilliant smile, to passionate discussions about art and social justice, to the pregnancy test he'd never known about because he'd already left for his father's company in another state. Sarah, he managed. Your mother's name is Sarah? Malik's eyes narrowed. Yeah. Sarah Thompson. Why? James felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Sarah Thompson. The same Sarah. Which meant. Just, wondering if I knew her, he said weakly. About your age, when was? I'm 15, Malik answered, suspicion creeping into his voice. Look, you want directions or not? I've got other customers to worry about. James pulled out his wallet with trembling fingers, overpaid for the bracelet, and accepted Malik's terse directions. Back in his car, he gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. 15 years. The timing matched perfectly. Sarah Thompson's son. Their son. The possibility thundered in his head as he drove away, but he found himself circling the block, watching Malik in his rearview mirror. The boy's determined stance, the artistic talent, even the shape of his jaw, how had he not seen it immediately? James drove to his hotel in a daze, the charity gala forgotten. He called his assistant, canceling all appointments for the next day. Sleep eluded him as memories of Sarah flooded back, their whirlwind romance, his father's ultimatum about the company, his cowardly departure. He'd tried to find her years later, but she'd moved away. Now here was Malik, selling handmade art on a street corner, probably unaware he was the heir to one of the country's largest fortunes. The weight of 15 years of absence pressed down on James's chest. He knew he should drive away, protect both of them from the complications of truth. Instead, he found himself planning his return to that street corner tomorrow, rehearsing questions that might unravel their shared past without revealing too much too soon. But as dawn approached, one thought kept repeating: how could he possibly bridge the chasm of 15 years? What right did he have to disrupt Malik's life now? The bracelet sat on his nightstand, its intricate patterns a testament to the son he'd never known he had, a son who'd inherited his mother's creativity and learned survival skills his father had never needed to know. The next afternoon found James parked across from Malik's usual corner, gathering courage. The boy was already there, arranging his merchandise with methodical care. James noticed details he'd missed yesterday, the careful way Malik protected his art from the sun, his polite interactions with passers-by, the watchful glances at approaching strangers. James stepped out of his car, this time dressed in casual clothes. Malik spotted him immediately. Back again. Malik's tone mixed wariness with curiosity. The hotel directions weren't clear enough. Actually, I wanted to see more of your work, James said, keeping his voice steady. The craftsmanship on that bracelet is remarkable. Malik's guard lowered slightly. Been practicing since I was 10. Mom taught me the basics before. He trailed off, then straightened. Anyway, got some new pieces today. As Malik showed his artwork, James asked careful questions. Each answer revealed another piece of the life he'd missed: Malik's childhood in various shelters, his mother's struggle with illness, his determination to stay in school despite working the streets. Where do you sleep? James asked, trying to mask his growing horror. Around. Malik's answer came sharp and defensive. Look, if you're with social services dash. I'm not, James interrupted. I'm just. What? A guilty father. A concerned stranger. I want to help. Don't need help from some rich guy looking to feel better about himself. Malik started packing his things. Marcus. Tony. Come check out this situation. Two teenage boys materialized from a nearby alley. They flanked Malik, arms crossed, expressions hostile. The taller one, Marcus, spoke first. This dude bothering you, Mal? Says he wants to help, Malik replied, skepticism clear in his voice. Tony, shorter but muscular, stepped forward. Yeah. Like those church people who want to save our souls. Or those program directors who want to lock us up in group homes. James raised his hands. Nothing like that. I just want to talk, maybe buy you all some food. We look hungry to you. Marcus demanded. Like we need your handouts. Other street kids were gathering now, drawn by the confrontation. James saw the fear beneath their anger, the instinctive distrust of adults who'd probably failed them repeatedly. You don't need anything from me, James acknowledged. But Malik's got talent. I'd like to support his art. My art ain't for sale to people like you anymore, Malik declared. This is how we survive. It's not your charity case. James felt the situation slipping away. These kids had built their own family, their own support system. His presence threatened that delicate balance. I understand, he said quietly. But I'll be around if you change your mind. As he walked back to his car, he heard the group's heated discussion. He's trouble, Mal. Probably some pervert. Or cops. Just stay away from him. Malik's voice rose above the others. I can handle myself. James sat in his car, watching the group disperse. Malik returned to his corner, but his relaxed demeanor had vanished. The other kids maintained a protective orbit around him, shooting suspicious glances at James's car. The gulf between their worlds yawned wider than ever. James had hoped money could bridge it. Isn't that what money was for? But these kids had survived by distrusting exactly that kind of offer. He thought of his own teenage years, cushioned by wealth and privilege. How could he possibly connect with a son who'd grown up on the streets? What could he offer besides money, which Malik clearly despised? His phone buzzed, another charity gala invitation. James stared at the glittering event details, then at Malik's corner. The contrast made him sick. Somewhere in this city, Sarah Thompson had raised their son alone, teaching him art and resilience while James attended cocktail parties. The hostility of Malik's friends was deserved. But James couldn't walk away again. He needed a different approach, one that wouldn't threaten the fragile community these kids had built, but might eventually allow him to become part of his son's life. As darkness fell, he watched Malik pack up his unsold art with the same careful attention he'd shown that morning. The other kids drifted back, forming a protective circle as they moved deeper into their territory. James started his car but didn't drive away until they disappeared from view, taking with them all his hopes for an easy reconciliation. The incident erupted without warning on a humid afternoon. James had maintained his distance for several days, observing from his car as Malik worked his corner. He'd noticed the increasing police presence in the area, the nervous energy among the street kids, but wasn't prepared for what happened next. 2 patrol cars pulled up alongside Malik's makeshift stand. James watched as officers approached, their hands resting casually on their belts. Malik remained still, his posture careful, controlled. ID check, one officer announced loudly. Everyone against the wall. Marcus and Tony emerged from their usual spots, along with 3 other teens. They moved slowly, hands visible, but tension crackled in the air. James stepped out of his car, drawn by instinct toward his son. These kids aren't doing anything wrong, James called out, approaching the scene. The lead officer turned. Sir, please return to your vehicle. This is a routine check. They're just selling artwork, James persisted, moving closer. Other residents began emerging from nearby buildings, drawn by the commotion. Mind your business, suit, a voice called from the growing crowd. We don't need your kind making things worse. Malik shot James a warning look, but it was too late. One of the younger teens, scared and cornered, tried to bolt. An officer grabbed him, and chaos erupted. Marcus moved to help his friend, Tony shouted, and suddenly bodies were colliding. James reached for Malik, intending to pull him to safety, but a resident blocked his path. Back off. The man's face twisted with anger. You bring your fancy car around here, watching our kids like some predator, now this. Get out. Others joined in, yeah, go back to your mansion. Leave our children alone. Privileged bastard. The police were losing control of the situation. More residents poured onto the street, their fury directed as much at James as at the officers. Malik had disappeared in the chaos, along with most of his friends. Sir, leave the area now, an officer ordered James, who stood frozen in the middle of the hostility. The crowd's anger felt like a physical force, pushing him back toward his car. "I'm trying to help," he protested weakly. "We don't want your help," someone screamed. "We take care of our own." James retreated to his vehicle as the situation deteriorated further. Through his windshield, he watched the police call for backup, the crowd grow larger, the afternoon dissolve into a mess of shouting and accusations. He'd made everything worse. Hours later, after the streets had cleared and the police had gone, James found himself parked outside a coffee shop several blocks away. The local news played on his phone, coverage of the disturbance in the neighborhood, reporters speculating about gang activity and drug sales. Nothing about the artwork, the kids trying to survive, the community protecting its own. His phone buzzed with a message from his office about a television segment on urban homelessness scheduled for that evening. James almost ignored it, but something made him tune in. The report was predictably superficial: statistics about rising homeless populations, interviews with policy experts, calls for reform. Then came footage from earlier that day. The camera had caught him, the rich outsider, trying to intervene. Comments flooded the news station's social media. Who was this man? What was his real agenda? Some recognized him as James Caldwell, leading to speculation about his company's role in urban development and displacement. James turned off the TV, sick with responsibility. His presence had escalated a routine harassment into a neighborhood incident, then into citywide news. He'd wanted to protect Malik but had instead painted a target on the entire community. Worst of all, he hadn't seen Malik since the chaos began. The boys' corner remained empty as darkness fell. Had he found safe shelter? Were his friends with him? The questions tortured James as he sat in his car, unable to leave yet knowing he couldn't stay. A knock on his window made him jump. An elderly woman peered in at him, her face stern but not hostile. "You're that rich man," she stated flatly. "The one causing trouble." James nodded, rolling down his window. "I didn't mean to dash." "Course you didn't. Nobody means to. But good intentions don't mean much around here." She studied him. "That boy you've been watching, he's something to you, isn't he?" James hesitated, then nodded again. "Thought so. Look like him around the eyes." She sighed. "But this ain't the way. You're making him a target, making all of them targets. Sometimes helping means staying away." She walked off before James could respond, leaving him with the weight of her words. The street remained empty, his son somewhere in the darkness beyond his reach. The gap between them felt wider than ever, carved deeper by the day's events and his own clumsy attempts to bridge it. James sat at the head of Caldwell Industries' conference table, surrounded by skeptical board members. The PowerPoint presentation behind him displayed his proposal: Youth Housing Initiative, a new approach to homelessness. "Let me get this straight," Richard Morton, his longest-serving board member, leaned forward. "You want to divert $30 million from our real estate division to build housing for homeless teenagers?" "Not just housing," James corrected, keeping his voice steady. "A comprehensive support center. Education facilities, job training, mental health services dash." "And how exactly does this benefit our shareholders?" Another board member interrupted. "We're not a charity, James." James advanced to the next slide, showing projected community impact statistics. "Think bigger picture. We invest in these communities now, property values stabilize, crime rates drop dash. Or we attract more homeless people to the area, our existing properties lose value, and we waste millions on social services that should be the government's responsibility." Morton's voice dripped with disapproval. The meeting deteriorated from there. James watched his carefully prepared presentation fall flat as board members raised objection after objection. Only a few seemed even marginally interested in the social impact data. Later that afternoon, he received an unexpected visitor in his office. Malik stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable in the corporate environment but determined. "Nice setup you got here," Malik said, glancing around the expansive office. "Your secretary almost didn't let me up." "How did you find me?" James asked, surprised. "Internet exists, you know. Wasn't hard to figure out who you are." Malik approached the desk. "Saw your little presentation on the news. Building houses for street kids." James gestured to a chair, which Malik ignored. "It's more than houses. It's dash. A way to make yourself feel better." Malik's voice hardened. Clear your conscience. That's not fair. Fair. Malik laughed sharply. You want to talk about fair? Where were these fancy plans 15 years ago? Where were you when Mom got sick? When we got evicted? James stood, moved to respond, but Malik continued. You think throwing money at us now makes up for anything? Your board members are right, you don't understand the first thing about our lives. Then help me understand, James pleaded. Work with me on this. Make it what you and your friends actually need, not what I think you need. Malik finally sat, exhaustion briefly replacing anger on his face. My friends think I'm crazy for even coming here. They say you're just another rich guy trying to buy good publicity. And what do you think? I think. Malik hesitated. I think you're trying to fix something that can't be fixed with money. But at least you're trying. Before James could respond, his assistant buzzed in. A community meeting was being organized to discuss his proposal, and the opposition was mounting. The meeting, held in a local church basement that evening, was packed. James recognized faces from the street confrontation days earlier. They weren't any happier to see him now. This is just gentrification in disguise, one resident shouted. First comes the youth center, then the luxury apartments. Where were you when our schools were closing? Demanded another. When our clinics shut down. He's trying to buy his way into our community. James stood at the podium, absorbing their anger. He spotted Malik at the back of the room, watching silently. You're right, James finally said, quieting the crowd. I haven't been here. I didn't see your struggles. I can't undo that. He paused, looking directly at Malik. But I'm here now. Not to take over, not to push anyone out. To listen. To learn. To help, if you'll let me. Why should we trust you? Someone called out. You shouldn't, James admitted. Trust has to be earned. That's why I'm asking for your help in designing this project. Your input, your leadership. Your community, your rules. The room erupted in discussion. James stepped away from the podium, letting them debate. He noticed Malik slip out the back door and followed. You actually meant that? Malik asked when James caught up. About letting the community lead. Yes. James leaned against the church wall. I've been going about this all wrong, haven't I? Pretty much. Malik almost smiled. But maybe there's a way to do it right. They stood in silence, watching the sunset paint the neighborhood in softer colors. The church door opened, spilling out heated discussions about community needs, project oversight, accountability measures. They'll never fully trust you, Malik warned. I know. James straightened. But maybe they'll trust you. The implications of that statement hung between them, heavy with unspoken acknowledgments and possibilities. Inside, the community continued debating their future. Outside, father and son took their first tentative step toward understanding each other. The woman's appearance at the community center construction site stopped all activity. Sarah Thompson stood at the chain-link fence, her dark hair streaked with gray, her face lined but still beautiful. Workers paused their tasks, sensing the tension as James and Malik both turned to stare. Mom. Malik's voice cracked. What are you doing here? Sarah's eyes locked onto James, ignoring the question. 15 years, and this is how I find out you're back. By seeing your face plastered all over the local news. James stepped forward, construction plans forgotten in his hands. Sarah, I dash. Don't. She cut him off, entering the site through the gate. Malik, get your things. We need to talk. I'm working, Malik protested, gesturing to the blueprints he'd been reviewing. We're finalizing the youth center designs dash. With him. Sarah's laugh was bitter. You have no idea what you're getting into, baby. Workers discreetly moved away, leaving the three of them in an island of tension. James found his voice again. Sarah, please. Let me explain dash. Explain what? She whirled on him. How you disappeared when I told you I might be pregnant. How you changed your number, moved offices, made it impossible to find you. Malik's head snapped toward James. You knew. About Mom being pregnant. James struggled for words. She said she thought she might be. I was young, scared. My father threatened to cut me off if I stayed with someone he considered beneath our family's status. Beneath your status, Sarah repeated coldly. So that's what I was. What we were. You don't understand, Dash. No, you don't understand. Sarah's control finally broke. You don't understand working 3 jobs while pregnant. You don't understand holding your sick child in emergency rooms because you can't afford a doctor. You don't understand watching your baby go hungry because you had to choose between food and rent. Each word hit James like a physical blow. Malik stood frozen between them, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. I raised him alone, Sarah continued, her voice dropping dangerously. I taught him art when we couldn't afford toys. I held him through nights in homeless shelters. I watched him grow into an amazing young man without any help from you. And now he's trying to help others like us, Malik interjected quietly. Is he? Sarah turned to her son. Or is he trying to ease his guilty conscience? Buy his way back into our lives. That's not fair, James protested. I'm trying to make things right, Dash. Right. Sarah laughed again, the sound harsh in the morning air. You think building some fancy center erases what you did? What we went through? Malik stepped between them. Mom, stop. This isn't just about us anymore. The center will help kids who have nowhere else to go. Like we did. Sarah's voice softened as she looked at her son. Baby, men like him, they don't change. They throw money at problems and expect everything to be fixed. Maybe, Malik acknowledged. But the money's real. The help is real. Doesn't that count for something? Sarah studied her son's face, then James's. You look like him, she said finally. I used to pray you wouldn't, but you do. Same eyes. Same stubborn jaw. She turned back to James. Did it hurt? Seeing him on that street corner, selling art to survive. Yes, James whispered. Good. Sarah straightened. It should hurt. That pain you felt. We lived it. Every day for 15 years. The silence that followed felt endless. Construction sounds gradually resumed in the background, life continuing despite their private drama. Finally, Malik spoke. I'm staying, he said firmly. The center needs to be built. These kids need help. Like you needed help. Sarah asked softly. Yes. Malik met her gaze. Exactly like that. And if he's willing to provide it now, I'm willing to accept it. Not for him. For them. Sarah looked between them once more, then nodded slowly. I'll be watching, she warned James. Every move. Every decision. One wrong step. I understand, James said quietly. She turned to leave, then paused. Malik, dinner's at 6. Your father can come. If he dares. They watched her walk away, her head held high just as Malik's always was. The construction sound seemed louder now, filling the space where their emotions had roared moments before. Well, Malik said finally, that could have gone worse. James looked at his son, seeing Sarah's strength reflected in his stance. Will you tell me about it someday? Growing up? Maybe. Malik picked up the blueprints they'd dropped. But right now, we have work to do. The protest started small, just Malik and a few others holding signs outside City Hall. James watched from his car as a young woman with close-cropped hair and intense eyes organized the group, directing them with quiet authority. That's Aisha, Malik explained later, when James asked. She's been fighting for homeless youth rights since she aged out of foster care. Aisha became a regular presence at the construction site, challenging every decision, questioning every design choice. At first, James found her persistence frustrating, until he noticed how she made Malik's face light up, how his son stood taller in her presence. The sleeping areas need to be smaller, she insisted during one planning meeting. More private spaces, less dormitory style. Smaller rooms mean fewer beds, James pointed out. Better to help fewer kids well than warehouse many badly, Aisha countered. Malik nodded in agreement, and James saw something shift between them, a shared understanding that went beyond the project. One evening, James arrived at the site to find Malik and Aisha sitting on a pile of construction materials, heads bent close together over a notebook. "We're planning a bigger demonstration," Malik explained, not moving away from Aisha. "The city's trying to pass new anti-loitering laws that would basically criminalize being homeless. They can't keep pushing us into the shadows," Aisha added, her voice fierce but controlled. "We need visibility, not more policing." James studied their body language, the way they unconsciously mirrored each other's movements. "How can I help?" Both teenagers looked surprised. "You want to help?" Aisha asked skeptically. "Won't that hurt your corporate image?" "My image can handle it," James replied. "What do you need?" They spent the next hour planning. James watched his son come alive, suggesting strategies, building on Aisha's ideas. This was a different Malik than the angry boy from the street corner, more focused, more hopeful. The demonstration grew larger than any of them expected. Hundreds gathered, many carrying signs Aisha and Malik had designed. James stood at the back, watching his son address the crowd. "We're not asking for handouts," Malik's voice rang clear. "We're demanding the right to exist in public spaces. To be seen. To be treated as human beings." Aisha stood beside him, their shoulders touching. When Malik's voice faltered, she stepped forward seamlessly, continuing his thoughts as if they shared one mind. Later, as the crowd dispersed, James saw them slip away together. They walked close, hands almost touching, lost in conversation. He started to follow but stopped himself. Some moments weren't meant for fathers, especially ones who'd just entered their children's lives. The next day, Malik arrived at the construction site with new energy. "Aisha thinks we should add a legal aid office to the center," he announced. "She knows lawyers who'd volunteer." "Good idea," James agreed, noting how his son's face softened at Aisha's name. "She's quite something, isn't she?" Malik's guard went up immediately. "Don't try to use her to connect with me. That's not what I dash." "She's the real thing," Malik continued. "She actually understands what we've been through. She lived it. Not like me," James finished quietly. "Yeah." Malik turned away, but not before James caught the conflict in his expression. "She says I'm too forgiving. That I should make you work harder for, whatever this is. Is that what you think?" "I think." Malik hesitated. "I think she's right about most things. But maybe not about this." They worked in silence for a while, reviewing plans that had grown more complex with each of Aisha's suggestions. Finally, Malik spoke again. "She lost her parents when she was 6. Foster care until she aged out. No one ever came looking for her." The weight of that statement hung between them. James understood the message, at least he had come looking, eventually. "The protest was her idea," Malik continued. "She said if I really wanted to honor where I came from, I needed to fight for those still there. Not just help build one center." "She's right," James said softly. "Yeah." Malik almost smiled. "She usually is." That evening, James watched from his office window as Malik and Aisha left the construction site together. They paused under a streetlight, and James saw his son reach for her hand. She took it, their fingers intertwining naturally, comfortably. The scene blurred slightly in James's vision. His son had found something real, something honest, in the midst of all the complexity their reunion had brought. Aisha might question James's motives, might challenge his every decision, but she gave Malik something James couldn't, understanding born of shared experience, strength forged in similar struggles. He turned away from the window, leaving them their privacy. There would be time tomorrow for plans and projects, for navigating the complicated waters of their developing relationship. Tonight was for youth, for hope, for the kind of connection that grew from shared battles and common dreams. The St. Mary's shelter smelled of industrial cleaner and old coffee. James stood in the doorway, watching volunteers serve dinner to a long line of tired faces. He'd visited 6 shelters today, each one teaching him something new about the world his son had grown up in. "Mr. Caldwell." A volunteer approached. "We weren't expecting someone from your position." "I'm here to learn," James replied, noting the skepticism in her expression. "May I help serve?" For the next hour, James ladled soup into plastic bowls, trying to meet each person's eyes, to see them as individuals rather than statistics. A teenage boy near the end of the line caught his attention, not because he looked like Malik, but because of the sketchbook clutched under his arm. "You're Malik's dad, aren't you?" the boy asked as James served him. "I'm Devin. We used to share that corner sometimes." James paused, soup ladle suspended. "You know Malik?" "Everyone knows Malik," Devin said, settling at a nearby table. "He was always sharing his food, teaching other kids how to make stuff they could sell. Even gave me my first set of pencils." James sat across from him, dinner service forgotten. "Tell me more." Devin opened his sketchbook, revealing detailed urban landscapes. "Malik saw me drawing with a ballpoint pen on newspaper. Came back the next day with real art supplies. Said talent deserves proper tools." "That sounds like him," James said softly. "Yeah, well." Devin's expression hardened. "Where'd he learn that?" "Not from you, right?" The accusation stung, but James didn't defend himself. "No. From his mother. And from living on these streets. You know what he did with his first big sale?" Devin continued, warming to his story. "Split it with 3 other kids who hadn't eaten that day. Wouldn't even take it back when they tried to repay him later. More shelter residents gathered around, adding their own Malik stories." James listened, each anecdote revealing another facet of his son's character: how he'd organized a makeshift art class for younger kids, how he'd stood up to bullies targeting newcomers, how he'd always seemed older than his years. "He was like our big brother," a young girl added. "Even when he didn't have nothing, he acted like he had everything to share. The cops used to hassle us all the time," another teen contributed. "But Malik taught us to stay calm, be respectful, keep our hands visible. Said getting angry just gives them an excuse." James absorbed every word, building a picture of the son he'd never known. A natural leader, protective of others despite his own vulnerability. Sarah had raised him well, teaching him to turn hardship into strength. Later that night, inspired by what he'd learned, James began drafting new additions to the youth center plans. Art supplies. Legal workshops. Peer mentoring programs. Everything his son had provided informally, formalized and funded. His phone buzzed. "Malik. Heard you been asking about me at the shelters," his son said without preamble. "I needed to understand," James replied. "To know who you are, not just who I assume you are." A long pause. And I'm proud of you," James said simply. "Not for surviving, though that's remarkable. For how you helped others survive too." Another pause. "That's what community is," Malik finally responded. "Something you're just learning about." "Yes," James acknowledged. "I am." "Devin called me," Malik continued. "Said you really listened. Didn't just throw money around or make promises. I'm trying to do this right." "Yeah." Malik's voice softened slightly. "Maybe you are." They talked for a while longer, Malik explaining the intricate support networks that existed among street kids, the unwritten rules and unofficial families that formed in society's shadows. James took notes, knowing each detail could help make the center more effective. "One more thing," Malik said before hanging up. "All those kids at the shelter. They're still there. Still waiting for help." "I know," James replied. "That's why we need to get this right. Not just the center, everything. Everything." Malik's tone was skeptical. "The laws. The system. The way people see kids like you were." "Like I am," Malik corrected. "Don't think having a rich dad suddenly changes who I am." "No," James agreed. "It doesn't. And it shouldn't." After they hung up, James stayed at his desk, reviewing his notes from the shelter visits. His son had created a support system from nothing, turned his own pain into protection for others. The center needed to build on that, not replace it. He began working on a new proposal, not just for one building, but for a network of connected services. Legal aid where Malik had offered street-smart advice. Healthcare where he'd shared band-aids and over-the-counter medicines. Art therapy where he'd given away pencils and hope. The magnitude of the task ahead was daunting, but James felt more certain than ever about the path forward. His son had already shown the way. Now it was time to follow his lead. The fundraising event transformed the Grand Hotel's ballroom into an art gallery. Malik's street art hung alongside works from established artists, their raw energy drawing crowds of wealthy potential donors. But the real focus was on the podium, where Malik stood adjusting his tie, a compromise between James's world and his own. "You don't have to do this," James said quietly, watching his son's nervous movements. "Yes, I do." Malik's fingers dropped from the tie. "These people need to understand. Really understand." The crowd settled into their seats, corporate executives, city officials, society figures who'd normally cross the street to avoid kids like Malik had been. James recognized the irony, he'd once been just like them. Malik approached the microphone, his stance shifting from nervous to determined. "I was 10 the first time I slept in a doorway," he began, his voice steady. "My mom was in the hospital. The shelter was full. I had a backpack with 2 shirts and some colored pencils." The room fell silent. James watched faces change as Malik continued, describing nights of hunger and fear, days of trying to stay invisible while selling enough art to eat. "But this isn't about making you feel sorry for me," Malik declared. "This is about the kids still out there. The ones you pretend not to see. They're artists, writers, dreamers, fighters. They're surviving despite everything the city throws at them. Imagine what they could become if we actually help them survive." James saw tears in some eyes, discomfort in others. Malik wasn't offering the sanitized version of homelessness they'd expected. He was giving them truth, raw and undeniable. "The youth center my father is funding," Malik continued, glancing at James. "It's a start. But it's not enough. We need systemic change. We need you, all of you, to see us as human beings, not problems to solve." The speech concluded to heavy applause. As donors crowded around with checkbooks open, James noticed the pride in his son's posture. Malik worked the room with natural charm, but never softened his message. Each donation came with a promise extracted, not just money, but involvement, engagement, real change. Later, as they packed up the artwork, Malik spoke quietly. "That wasn't so hard." "You were amazing," James replied. "You made them listen." "Yeah, well." Malik carefully wrapped a painting. "Learned that from Mom. She always said if you want change, you have to make people uncomfortable first. She's right." James helped with the wrapping. "Speaking of your mother, how are things at home?" Malik's hands stilled. "Better. She's still angry at you, but..." He shrugged. "She sees you trying. Says actions matter more than words. Smart woman." "Yeah." Malik resumed packing. "She's thinking about teaching art classes at the center. Once it's open." The news surprised James. "Really? That would be wonderful." "Don't get too excited," Malik warned. "She's doing it for the kids, not you." "I know." James smiled slightly. Like mother, like son. They worked in companionable silence until Malik spoke again. "The media's been calling. They want to do a story about us. Long-lost billionaire's son, redemption narrative, all that. We don't have to dash." "I want to," Malik interrupted. "But not their version. The real story. About privilege and poverty. About how some kids get second chances and others don't get any chances at all." James studied his son's determined expression. "It could get messy. Personal. Everything about this is messy and personal." Malik met his father's eyes. "But maybe that's the point. Maybe people need to see the mess to understand why it matters. Your mother won't like the publicity." "Already talked to her." Malik grinned slightly. "She said if we're going to air our dirty laundry, we better make it count for something." The ballroom was almost empty now, their voices echoing in the large space. James looked at the walls where Malik's art had hung, scenes of street life rendered in stark, honest detail. "You know," James said carefully, "I'm proud of who you are. Not who you might have been if I'd stayed, but who you actually are." Malik absorbed this, then nodded once. "Yeah. Me too." He picked up a box of artwork. "Come on, old man. We've got work to do." They carried the last boxes out together, father and son walking in step. Through the hotel's glass doors, James could see reporters already gathering, hungry for their story. But for now, in this moment, they were just two men building something new from the wreckage of the past. The attack happened at midnight. Security cameras caught it all: 3 men in hoodies breaking into the nearly completed youth center, methodically smashing windows, spray painting walls, destroying months of work. They saved the art room for last, shredding canvases and breaking every easel Malik had carefully assembled. James arrived first, alerted by security. He stood in the wreckage, glass crunching under his shoes, trying to process the destruction. Then he heard running footsteps. No, no, no. Malik burst through the broken door, Aisha close behind. He stopped dead at the sight of his ruined art room. All the kids' work. The walls were covered with spray-painted slurs: "Street rats go home." "No thugs here. Keep our neighborhood clean." Aisha pulled out her phone, documenting the damage. "This isn't random vandalism," she said grimly. "This is organized. Someone wants us gone." Police arrived, took statements, made non-committal noises about investigation priorities. James watched Malik move through the space, touching broken things with trembling hands. "We can rebuild," James offered. "Insurance will cover dash." "This isn't about money." Malik's fist hit a damaged wall. "They destroyed their art. Their stories. Things that can't be replaced." More people arrived, sheltered kids who'd been helping with the center, community members who'd supported the project, even some of Malik's old street friends. They stood in shocked silence, taking in the devastation. "We should organize a vigil," Aisha suggested quietly. "Show them they can't scare us away." Malik nodded slowly, his initial rage transforming into determination. "Tonight. With candles. Right here." James stepped forward. "Maybe we should wait, let things cool down dash." "No." Malik's voice was firm. "They want us to hide. To feel ashamed. We won't." Word spread quickly through social media and street networks. By sunset, hundreds had gathered, holding candles and hand-drawn signs. Malik and Aisha moved through the crowd, organizing people into a protective circle around the building. James hung back, watching his son work. He'd seen Malik's leadership before, but this was different. This was pure conviction, turning tragedy into strength. Then the counter-protesters arrived. A small group at first, then more. They carried their own signs: "Property values matter. Support police, not criminals. No homeless shelter in our backyard." The tension rose as the groups faced each other across the street. Police appeared, forming a line between them. James moved closer to Malik, instinctively protective. "Stay back," Malik warned. "Your presence just makes them angrier." "I'm not leaving you here. This isn't your fight." "Yes, it is." James stepped up beside his son. "It became my fight the day I found you." Social media exploded with images of father and son standing together at the vigil. #StandWithMalik started trending. News vans appeared, their lights harsh in the growing darkness. The counter-protesters grew louder, more aggressive. Someone threw a bottle. It shattered near Aisha, glass mixing with the earlier destruction. "If you're really with us," Malik said suddenly to James, "prove it. Talk to them. They're your kind of people." James looked at the angry faces across the street: middle-class property owners, business people, parents worried about neighborhood change. He'd been one of them, blind to the human cost of their comfort. He walked toward the police line, hands raised. "I want to speak to them." The officers hesitated, then parted. James faced the counter-protesters, recognizing some from charity galas and business meetings. "You're afraid," he began. "I understand that. Change is scary. But look behind me." He gestured to the vigil. "Those aren't criminals or thugs. They're children. Children like my son, who lived on these streets because people like us looked away." The crowd stirred uncomfortably. James continued, his voice carrying in the night air. "You're worried about property values. I'm a developer. I know property. But I also know the cost of ignoring human value. Of treating people like problems instead of possibilities. He saw phones recording, knew his words would be online within minutes. His board would be furious. Investors would panic. He didn't care. That building isn't just a shelter. It's a statement. That every life matters. That every child deserves a chance. Even the ones we've tried so hard not to see. The tension began to shift. Some counter-protesters drifted away, others lowered their signs. Behind him, the vigil continued, candlelight steady in the darkness. When James returned to Malik's side, his son's expression was unreadable. "That'll cost you," Malik said finally. "Some things are worth the cost." They stood together as the night deepened, watching their two worlds collide and begin, perhaps, to understand each other. The damaged building loomed behind them, its broken windows reflecting candlelight like tears. The revelation came during the rebuilding. A familiar figure appeared at the construction site, impeccably dressed and radiating artificial concern. Victor Reeves, James's former business partner, surveyed the damage with practiced sympathy. "Terrible business, this vandalism," he said smoothly. "Perhaps it's a sign to reconsider the project's location." James stiffened, recognizing something in Victor's tone. "You know something about this?" James. Victor smiled thinly. "Always so direct. Let's talk privately." But Malik had already emerged from the building, covered in paint from restoration work. He froze at the sight of Victor, something clicking in his expression. "I know you," Malik said slowly. "You used to come to Mom's diner. Before." Victor's smile faltered slightly. "Ah, young Mr. Thompson. Yes, I did frequent that establishment. Such a shame about its closure." "Closure?" Malik stepped forward. "You mean when the health department suddenly found violations after Mom refused to sell? When our landlord doubled the rent overnight?" James looked between them, pieces falling into place. "Victor, what did you do?" "What I had to." Victor's pretense dropped. "Your father asked me to handle the situation. A CEO's son couldn't be involved with a waitress from the wrong side of town. Especially not with a child on the way." The truth hit James like a physical blow. "You knew about Sarah's pregnancy?" "Of course." Victor straightened his tie. "Your father was quite concerned about potential inheritance complications. I made sure Miss Thompson understood her position. The health inspections, the rent increases, the blocked job applications, all necessary precautions." Malik lunged forward, but James caught his arm. "You destroyed our lives," Malik spat. "Made us homeless. Made Mom sick from working 3 jobs. I protected the Caldwell family interests." Victor seemed unperturbed. "Just as I'm trying to do now. This center of yours, James, it's bad for business. Bad for the neighborhood. Bad for your company's image." "The vandalism," James said quietly. "That was you. An unfortunate necessity. But perhaps now you'll see reason. Return to more appropriate charitable endeavors." James released Malik's arm, but his son didn't move. They stood together, father and son, facing the men who'd orchestrated their separation. "You're fired," James said simply. Victor laughed. "You can't fire me. I'm a partner. And I have documents, records of every decision your father made regarding the Thompson situation. Imagine the scandal." "Release them," Malik challenged. "Show everyone what you did. We're not afraid of the truth anymore." Bold words from a street rat, Victor sneered. "But think carefully, James. Your father's legacy dash." "My father was wrong," James interrupted. "And so were you. Release whatever you want. In fact." He pulled out his phone, still recording. "Why don't you repeat everything you just said? About orchestrating our separation. About the vandalism." Victor's composure cracked. "You wouldn't dare dash. Watch me." James's finger hovered over the share button. "Unless you'd prefer to resign quietly. Sign over your partnership. Leave us alone." The standoff lasted several tense moments. Finally, Victor straightened his jacket. "You're making a mistake." "No," James replied. "I made my mistake 15 years ago, letting people like you decide what was best for my family." After Victor left, Malik turned to his father. "You knew about him coming to the diner?" "No." James ran a hand through his hair. "But I should have. Should have questioned why Sarah disappeared so completely. Should have fought harder to find her." Mom said. Malik hesitated. "She said someone threatened to have her arrested if she contacted you. Said they had evidence she was extorting your family." "Victor." James's voice was heavy with realization. Always Victor, protecting the family interests. They stood in silence, surrounded by the half-repaired damage of Victor's latest attempt to separate them. "What now?" Malik finally asked. "Now we finish rebuilding. Together." James looked at his son. "And then we make sure everyone knows the truth. Not just about Victor, about all of it. The system that lets people like him destroy lives in the name of protecting wealth. It'll be messy," Malik warned. "Lots of rich people won't like their dirty laundry exposed." "Good." James smiled grimly. Maybe it's time they felt uncomfortable. Like your mother said, sometimes that's where change starts. Construction sounds resumed around them as workers returned to their tasks. Father and son surveyed the progress, walls rising again, stronger than before, built on a foundation of hard truths and healing wounds. "You know," Malik said thoughtfully, "we should add a legal clinic to the center. Help other families fight back when people like Victor try to destroy them." "Already working on it," James replied. "Your mother suggested the same thing." They shared a look of understanding. The past couldn't be undone, but its lessons could build a better future. Together, they turned back to the work ahead, knowing that every repaired wall and restored painting was an act of defiance against those who tried to keep them apart. The youth center would stand as a testament to resilience, to second chances, to the power of truth over privilege. And somewhere in the city, Victor Reeves was learning a lesson James had already embraced: some things matter more than family legacies and business interests. Some things, like love, justice, and redemption, are worth any cost.